Hello everybody, my name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Today we're going to be discussing Dennis Prager, some recent comments that he made on Charlie Kirk's podcast, which were made in response to the controversy that he drummed up during his debate with Pints with Aquinas and his appearance on Jordan Peterson's lecture on Exodus, in which he defended lust and argued that lust was not a sin. And this has manifested itself into lolly animated pornography. So that is what Dennis Prager went viral for defending, for mitigating, for obfuscating. And we're going to be discussing his attempt at rehabbing himself. And in doing so, Dennis Prager has become the Rick Warren of Jews. And we're going to talk about what exactly that looks like, because Dennis Prager's ego is massive and it is comparable to Rick Warren. So we're going to get into this comparison. But first, I want to let you know, Evangelical Dark Web is a Christian news gathering and commentary ministry. You can support us over at evangelicaldarkweb.org/join through our Patreon-like system. This gives you access to more content that it then goes on YouTube or podcast or, articles that are free. But in any case, check out the free Evangelical Dark Web newsletter. But the least you can do is like this video, subscribe to the channel if you're new. That really helps with the magical algorithm. So we're going to be looking at this appearance that Dennis Prager had on Charlie Kirk. This was about 2 to 3 weeks ago. And this is his attempt to rehab his image with social conservatives after, he went pretty liberal on a social issue, a key social issue that threatens many young men. So we're going to start off with the viral clip that has got him on this rehab tour. And then we're going to get into some clips on this podcast with Charlie Kirk.
Bad thoughts and don't act on them, you're on a higher moral plane than the guy who never has a bad thought. I don't get any credit for not molesting children. I'm as interested in children sexually as I am in bananas or peach trees. Okay? So I get no credit for not molesting a child. But the sick dude who does want to and doesn't, he gets a lot of credit.
So speaking of pedophilia, suppose a man says,
I want to pause right there because that is not biblical. What Dennis Prager said is not biblical whatsoever. The person who doesn't have sinful thoughts is on a higher moral plane than the person who does. Jesus, case in point, does not have sinful thoughts. He does not have sinful desires. Jesus does not have original sin inside of him. He is on a higher moral plane, in small part because he doesn't have sinful thoughts, in large part because he's God. So what Dennis Prager said there, wholly untrue. I had to interrupt there because we need to point to Jesus in this, and Jesus did not have sinful thoughts and operated on a higher moral plane.
I view animated child porn. So there's no real victim in that sense of child pornography, which we both agree is horrendous. And by viewing animated child porn, it prevents me from acting out sexually on a child. Now, I deny that. I think that pornography inflames us to then want to act those fantasies out, and I think there's good studies that back that up. But surely you wouldn't say to the man who views animated child pornography, that's not bad so long as you don't act it out. Wouldn't you want to help this poor sick dude?
Yes, I would, but I'm thrilled that he's not acting it out. I mean,
agreed.
Okay,
of course.
Well, that's big.
Yeah.
We're both thrilled that he might have a poor substitute, but it is a substitute if that were the case. No child is being used. Yeah. It's all animated.
Yeah.
And he
but would you use the word evil of animated child pornography? Because I certainly would.
No, I would use evil only with behavior. That's where we might differ, forgetting the sex issue. You can't be evil. You didn't do evil if you thought evil. You did evil
if I'm
if you
masturbating
committed.
to animated pictures of pornography, I'm not doing something evil.
That's correct.
Yeah, I think that's despicable. Yeah.
Really?
Yes, of course.
Who is being hurt? You have to have a victim.
Oh, I'll tell you, there's at least 2 people being hurt. There's the person who's poisoning himself by encouraging him to think acting out on children, and there's also the animator.
Okay, wait a minute. We both are aching for him not to have those fantasies. I agree with you, but
It's worth noting that the Bible points out that sexual sin is the only sin that affects, that in which you are the harmed person. Usually when you sin against God, you sin against your neighbor, but sexual sin is a sin against yourself.
Won't call it evil.
I won't call a fantasy evil. Yeah. There's too much real evil on earth for me to start being preoccupied with people's thinking.
It's not just thinking; it's him masturbating to images of children.
Okay. So that the real question about the whole pornography issue is not pornography; it's masturbation.
So Dennis, welcome.
So just to give a quick disclaimer, this is all on 1.25 speed. I usually have things faster, but this is the next clip I want to show. It's where he gets into the idea, exploring more about behavior versus thoughts.
I was asked on a broadcast with a Catholic podcaster. We were talking about thoughts versus deeds, and this whole issue, which I raised originally in the Exodus seminar with Jordan Peterson on the Daily Wire, which I was honored to be part of, and the issue of can sins be can thoughts be sinful? Does God or man, should we regard thoughts or even as evil, or only deeds? And I am on the side overwhelmingly of deeds. I don't think good thoughts count as good deeds, and I don't think bad thoughts count as bad deeds, and I think that's true for God too. But I can't speak for God. I can only speak for someone like myself who's inspired by God. But as you are, as anybody who wants to be inspired, I don't hold that I have a special relationship that others don't have. But I want to make that clear. If we are going to say that thoughts are evil or render you evil, then thoughts render you good. But good thoughts that don't translate into good deeds are worthless. In fact, many good thoughts translate into bad deeds. Most communists in the West had good thoughts: equality, fraternity, comradeship.
So I thought it was liberty, equity, fraternity in the French Revolution. But anyway, our thoughts are as dirty rags by God's standards. And Dennis Prager is not really helping his case here. But I don't even think using the Old Testament he's helping his case. But he's probably also using the Talmud, which, is a lot more loose, more morally speaking. So the next clip I want to show you, but first I want to give a shout out to Anthony, who is the reason that I'm doing this video. He's the one who found this podcast with Charlie Kirk and decided to write an article about it and gave me the timestamps to do this video. So special shout out to Team Evangelical Dark Web, because it's not just me.
Thoughts don't count, only deeds. We got into the discussion of what is it called when it's not AI. He didn't use AI.
It was animated was the word that
animated,
he used.
Yes, animated kiddie porn, animated child porn. So I had made it clear, and I'll make it clear again, in the list of true evils on earth, the using children for porn is one of the greatest of all the possible evils humans can engage in. In fact, let me make this clear. I would be for castrating anyone who made kiddie porn. Just to give you an idea of my passion on that subject. I am, of course, I'm for having it illegal. I even flirt with the idea of animated kiddie porn, the distribution of it being illegal. Just to give you an example. But he asked me, in light of my position that only deeds really count in terms of evil, what do I think of animated kiddie porn? Is it evil? And I said, no. Meaning that compared to using real children, using animation, of course it's less evil. I mean, the gulf is gigantic. If a child isn't used, that's all I meant. I think it's deranged. Listen, you know, since you listen to me, how much I want to protect children, how much I am angry when they have drag queen story hours for kids. So I'm devoting my life to protecting children. I'm not going to care about this issue. But in a philosophical sense, on the sheer one issue of, is watching something that didn't happen, as disgusting as it is that evil? It's deranged, it's sick. Evil is when a real human is used. Now, then people say, but this is a gateway to real kiddie porn or real, God forbid, use of children. Well, that is use of children. If that is true, it is an almost inevitable gateway to real child porn, then it is evil. In any event, I'm for having it illegal. Just.
So first he said he flirted with the idea. Now he says, in any event, it should be illegal. But it's also worth noting that transgenderism is also associated with this. You see this with the Mr. Beast character, Chris Tyson, I think is his last name. And, he was tweeting his love of Lolly back in the day. So his fascination, his fetish with Japanese animated kiddie porn, direct connection to, I would argue, his current state of being a transvestite. So I'd say there's a direct line to that and other proclivities, other sexual deviances. And it's the pornography that creates these sexual deviances, not the sexual deviances that necessarily lead to the pornography. I think the demand or the supply of this vice perverts the mind and enables them to desire more unnatural desires. So the next clip we have is where we get into Kanye West and Candace Owens. And this is an argument that Dennis Prager makes to rehab his image by talking about a moral bank account. So we're going to get into this. And we also have a little bit of a Rick Warren moment in this. I'm going to point it out when it happens.
Is that there are people on the right, and there are some Christians, not the biggest Christians by any means. The biggest Christians have been allies of mine, but there are Christians and there are conservatives who have acted in this case just like the left does with me. What they're doing is they're playing gotcha. You can have a lifetime of good work, but you said a sentence, or in one case, a word, wrenched out of context. I'll give you an example of how a decent Christian, which is most by far, but some have not been, or a decent conservative, again, most by far, but some have not been, should have acted. When Kanye West came out with anti-Semitic comments, and they were anti-Semitic, again, I don't use that word loosely, like I don't use the word evil loosely.
Okay, first of all, Jews usually use the word anti-Semitism loosely. Second of all, he's comparing a statement in which he said that lusting after kiddie porn isn't immoral to Kanye West's statement about the Jews. Is there really a moral equivalency between these two comparisons? Absolutely not. But which one will get you canceled in the media? Kanye West. Dennis Prager still has his radio show. He still has his Twitter account that I know of. Still has all his social media intact that I know of, because Dennis Prager is a part of Conservative Inc. He's kind of a part of that Daily Wire media sphere, and, it's not often that Daily Wire personalities get censored on social media, if we're being really brutally honest, compared to their competitors. But there's not a moral comparison between something that is a definite sin and something that is a social contrivance, which is anti-Semitism. That is a social contrivance. It is one of those dirty words to scare Christians into standing down on what they believe, because ultimately the Bible is anti-Semitic. The Bible does ultimately place the blame of killing Jesus on the Jews, which the ADL said is an anti-Semitic belief, but that is the belief articulated quite clearly in the Gospel of John and the Book of Acts. Clearly articulate that viewpoint, but nevertheless, if you believe what the Bible says, you're going to be labeled with an anti-Semitic label. You just can't get over that. So for Dennis Prager to make that on the same level as lusting after children, that's despicable.
And his good friend Candace Owens had not condemned him. I got calls and emails from some of the leading Jews in America, including conservatives. Dennis, you must speak out against Candace Owens for not saying anything about her friend Kanye West. But I didn't, because I knew how much good Candace Owens has done. Let's say she made a mistake. Okay, I won't join the bandwagon because she has done so much good. She has a very high moral bank account with me. What I did was I called her up. I said, Candace, talk to me. What's going on? Then a few weeks later, I wrote my column on Candace Owens and Kanye West. And I spoke about how much good she has done, how there's not an anti-Semitic bone in her body, how she is so pro-Israel. Her husband is one of the leading activists in England on behalf of Israel.
That's really gay, by the way, that her husband's a simp for Israel in England. Like, isn't he like a Catholic Answers level Catholic? Like, that's embarrassing, bro.
And I hope one day she will make a statement. She should make eventually a statement about Kanye West. That is her decision at her time. That's what I wrote. And that is the decent thing to do because she had a moral bank account. Do I not have a moral bank account with conservatives and Christians? Is there a bigger non-Christian friend of Christians in America than Dennis Prager? I can't think of who that is.
So let's just... So there's your Rick Warren moment. Is there a bigger non-Christian friend of Christians in America than Dennis Prager? Like, you're getting the ego inflated here. And that's the Rick Warren and Dennis Prager coming out. He doesn't think there's a bigger Christian, non-Christian ally of Christians than Dennis Prager. So that's the type of mindset that he has. And you see how he tries to use good deeds to offset bad deeds, which is a false gospel. Which, again, he's not a Christian. He's not a professing Christian. But his views very much in line with a false belief, a very common false belief. But he tries to dress up the idea that good people go to heaven and bad people go to hell. The idea that your good must outweigh your bad. He tries to dress that up in sophistry. But it's a very simple and demonic religious belief that he has. So I'm going to replay that last part.
Christian friend of Christians in America than Dennis Prager. I can't think of who that is. And yet to jump on this, all of a sudden, I am a bad guy. A lifetime of goodness doesn't matter. All of a sudden, a bad guy, it doesn't reflect on me. It reflects on them. And it is distressing.
So it's very mean is kind of where he's going with that. Our last clip will be where he goes full Rick Warren, and that is right here.
Highway, it's not evil. I mean, we can't cheapen the word. If it makes God and religion look bad. I have brought more people to Christianity, I believe, than any American Christian. Okay? And I'm a Jew, I might add. And I'm proud of that. And part of the reason is I make God real. I show God in a light that doesn't make him look foolish. If God thinks masturbation is evil, that's not my God. I'm sorry.
And
I gave this man an example of a man I knew. 15 years, took care of his Alzheimer's wife. She didn't even know who he was. He wouldn't marry another woman. He wouldn't divorce her. All he did is take care of her. I don't know if he masturbated. But I asked Matt Fradd, if he did, was it evil? And he said, well, you can't give me that example or whatever. But yes, he thinks it's evil. That hurts me on behalf of religion. That's mean.
And
now, if masturbation becomes an addiction, if masturbation hurts a marriage.
All right, that's the end of the clip that I wanted to show you. But you see him go full Rick Warren by saying he's brought more people to Christ than any Christian in America, or any Christian. He's brought more people to Christianity than any Christian alive, and he's a Jew. Look how good he is. And that is a Rick Warren level of ego. We finally found someone whose ego is large enough to compete and go toe-to-toe with Rick Warren, who got up at the Southern Baptist Convention in 2022 and basically said the same exact thing, that he's trained millions of pastors, baptized millions of people have come to Christ because of Rick Warren. That is the level of ego that Rick Warren had in 2022 in Anaheim, and that is the same level of ego that Dennis Prager is showing here in his podcast with Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk doesn't really give any meaningful pushback to that statement or the first statement, and it just shows you the level of evil that Dennis Prager is wrestling with. Like, this guy has a massive pride, probably is a massive coomer, and he's also, I don't want to say controlled opposition, but he is a gatekeeper in conservative media as a result, because he's one of these people that wants to conserve what are you trying to conserve? He wants to conserve a level of degeneracy in society. Now, we're not going to talk about the theological issue of masturbation. A lot of Christians interpret 1 Corinthians 6 when it says effeminate. They interpret that to be talking about masturbation, those who masturbate. So that's just some history, but this isn't a deep dive on that. So that's, that is what I wanted to show you about Dennis Prager. He is not on our side because, first of all, he is unregenerate. Second of all, he has a massive ego. And third of all, if we talk about, PragerU, which PragerU back in the day was good. And then I believe it was 2018 was their last good year. I think they went downhill. After they brought on Candace Owens, actually, I thought they went downhill. Like, Candace Owens, massive grifter back then. And they brought her on because she was black. Let's face it, there's no other real reason to bring on Candace Owens. And that to me was a downfall of PragerU. Their videos weren't really good after that. Or not nearly as good, and they ran out of topics, I guess. So anyway, Dennis Prager is just one of many people in conservative media that are gatekeepers. Fun fact that he's also a Jew in media, and there's a Jews control the media vibe that Kanye was canceled for saying. But the actual issue with Kanye was that, first of all, he wants to be nicer than God. That was his Hitler comment. He's trying to be nicer than God by saying God loves Hitler. Hitler's in hell right now. That's good evidence that that's not true, Kanye. And then he also he counted the cost and determined that calling out the fashion industry wasn't worth it. Like, the gospel, he'll believe the gospel up to a point, but not if it means calling out Balenciaga and the fashion industry for its exploitation of children. So he won't call the fashion industry out because he counted the cost. He wants to, dress like an idiot. And that's the issue with Kanye. So, not that he said Jews control the media, which is factually kind of accurate. So, anyway, that's all I got to say about that. My name is Ray. This is the Evangelical Dark Web. If you like this kind of content, subscribe to the channel as well. Have a blessed day, and we will catch you on the next one.